Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. This is going to happen in your life at some point. Maybe it's happening right now. Chaos, just crazy things going on. Yeah, we try to navigate through it, and we wonder sometimes, why is this happening? Why is this going on? We're going to look at chaos through the lens of somebody that has a scientific background and has been studying much of this for many years. He's also done some pretty amazing discoveries, uncovered the explanatory equivalences between free radical theory and chemical reactions, and sociopolitical explanations of how human radicals can cause massive society-connected disruptions, and so much. Just a piece of what he's done in his career. So great to have him back as our Professional of the Year. Grant Venerable joins us on the program. How you doing today, Grant?
I'm fine, Stephen.
Is there chaos going on in your life right now?
Yes, there's always chaos in my life. That is a fact of my life. And it's only been since, in the last 30 years that I've been able to embrace chaos as an ally. Now, that's a concept from Jungian psychology, that you can't create anything without chaos. That's a paradox, or so it seems, but it's really not. And when people do things that introduce chaos, even if they don't intend to, they don't realize what they're unleashing. And that's what happened 2 weeks ago in an election that we had, and in which one of the winner of that election introduced something called Project 2025, which is a great template for chaos, which really means it has the two sides of creation and destruction. And what has been created is something that the creators cannot even control. So the operative word here around chaos, the creative medium, is who controls it? Once the chaotic flow gets going, once you get this river flowing, even those that contributed to it, they never have control over it. Because the thing I want to stress this morning comes from this mythology everyone grew up with, called the Garden of Eden, which was the appearance of dualism, how the ancients, the Hebrew people were coming to terms with this strange dualism that human beings handle. That dualism found its way into something called the Torah, and then later in the entire Bible. It's a story of order, disorder, and chaos. And nothing happens in life, nothing good happens until chaos occurs. And in one of my books, Managing in a Five-Dimension Economy, I actually describe how a system evolves from a simple system that has just one element in it, and we can call that element purpose. It doesn't have anything material to act on yet, but as soon as you add the second element, called material resources, purpose has something it can act on that the physical senses and the mind can actually observe. But that's not a very complete system, because it lacks interfaces, it lacks channels, linkages that holds the thing together into a structure. And most of our corporations and even our government, it's hard to get past that three-part system, because it needs two other parts that are either imperfectly included or are not included at all. The fourth part is change, planning for change. And the part change plays in maintaining balance in a system and improvement in the system. But then there's still one thing missing, and hardly any corporations have that. And every big corporation we look at, whether they're banks or aircraft manufacturers are having issues, problems, financial challenges, airplane challenges, because of the fifth element that's missing. That's called the quintessence. And that comes out of African, Greek, Roman mythology. So that's what we need to get down to, is the role of the quintessence. The quintessence is the unifying principle of a system. That is where the paradoxes come out. So chaos, that's the portal to a new kind of order. It has to have special kinds of controls. And anyway, once it's put in play, you can't stop it. I want to just read some things from the prequel to the memoir. The memoir is Footprints in the Chaotic Unknown. Please look online on Amazon, Apple, or Barnes & Noble, and you will find that memoir in 4 ebook volumes. And they roughly parallel my own life, but they also parallel the existence of the United States, the existence of the Western world, the African world, the Asian world, the Native American world, and everything else. But it especially parallels the founding of the universe 12 to 14 billion years ago. That pattern is still operative today. It's such an impressive pattern, people created religions around it to rather parallel, to bring that pattern under the apparent control of individuals who master the particular religion. So that, in a nutshell, is how we got to where we are today. So the prequel starts with the title, From Eden's Dawn to Freedom's Light. God's race and history in the AI revolution. That is the artificial intelligence revolution. Wow. That's a whole bunch of stuff that's just very critical to understand, to wrap our arms around. So with that, the prequel leads us into an essay that revolves around these 4 characters that were the creators of the Garden of Eden. And they're watching planet Earth of humankind after Adam and Eve were ejected from Eden for violating the principle of dualism. Now, yes, there were things about eating a fruit, forbidden fruit, that was the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. But you see, that good and evil dualism was the rub in this whole thing. How do you manage that? It's basically, how do you manage knowledge and wisdom? That has been humankind's challenge ever since Eden, and even before Eden, wherever Eden was occurring on other galaxies, other planets, other galaxies. So that's really what the prequel is about, and that's at the start of each of the 4 volumes, which is starting to sell, actually. The publisher called me this morning and said, your ebooks are starting to sell. People are starting to discover them. So do look those up, because that really tells the story of chaos. But chaos, from my very personal view, how it has acted upon my life and been both a destructive force and a creative force. But I had to get enough wisdom of living to see how chaos actually is what leads to the creative side of life. So I speak as a man who has had jobs and careers, and more than one, and we try not to get terminated in our jobs, but that's exactly what chaos arranged for me, was to lose several jobs, very important, good jobs. Now that may sound strange, but I had to live long enough to recognize, oh, it was time for me to leave. that position. And until my conscious mind could catch up with my unconscious wisdom, I didn't know that. And I didn't even know I was contributing to my termination on my first good job where that happened. And that's what the prequel goes into, is how paradoxes, this stress, this tension between good and evil, all the dualisms of life, wealth and poverty, conservative and liberal. You can't get rid of either side, because if you get rid of one of them, you lose the other one. That's called the diacritical purpose, shall I say, the diacritical element in our lives that makes life so paradoxical. Well, that parallels space and time. If you don't have space, you won't have no space, which is time. If you don't have time, you won't have no time, which is space. So you just have to kind of go with that until it sinks in. But when your inner self disappears and loses power, your outer self disappears and loses power. That, in a sense, is life and death. But we go through a series of births and deaths. It isn't just in this particular body. So stick around, folks, and you will begin to see what this is about. Any questions come up, Stephen? I should think they are.
Well, by the way, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. You can reach us if you have a question for Grant based on what we're talking about today. How do we navigate chaos? When you're in a situation, life has been somewhat quiet, then things come up and you feel like you're getting hit from every side. Got to deal with that, got to deal with that, got to deal with that. How do you navigate through chaos? That's my first question. And question number 2, do you feel it's necessary to build resilience in our lives?
Yes. My favorite example is a very Californian example, because I grew up in beach communities. Los Angeles is a big beach community. Then San Luis Obispo, where I taught at Cal Poly. But the beach has what we call waves, water waves, surf. And it's the surfers that have mastered that very question that you ask, how to navigate chaos. As soon as the water becomes your friend, as soon as the current becomes your friend, instead of something to fear, which is one of the greatest destructive forces in our lives, fear. As soon as you master that, fear of the water, fear of the surf, you can control it. It's a paradox. And control doesn't mean grabbing it and trying to make the water stay still and act the way you want to. You go with the surf. You go with the wave. And that's what these surfers have learned how to do when they body surf. I used to love to body surf. Or with surfing with a board. What you learn is how to go with the currents of the water or the currents of the life. Because at the moment you go against them, you lose. You lose the ball game. And surfers have learned that. Now, I'm thinking culturally and politically about that today. And that we have a newly elected president-elect, and he has unleashed some forces already in terms of, changing government bureaucracies, and a lot of his supporters think, this is great. Well, it's great as long as it doesn't interfere with the laws of chaos. There would be no universe. There would be no life, no humankind without chaos and the laws of chaos. The 2 laws I'm thinking of are, if you read about, just Google it, read it, chaos theory. The first law is initial conditions, a very technical term for, how was life in the beginning, before there was anything? There were initial conditions. They had no physical form. They only were concepts. They were mental, emotional, spiritual ideas. that came together as initial conditions for what many astrophysicists call the Big Bang, one of the theories of how the universe came into being, or at least this particular universe. And there were initial conditions that led to that Big Bang, which led to space exploding and time appearing in the space-time continuum and leading to an evolution of space moving out in all what became directions and dimensions, and then somewhere in there was a crack in the space-time continuum, and material stuff appeared in the cracks. Matter appeared. Galaxies appeared. Stars appeared. But they appeared from the atoms and the molecules that appeared in that process. The second law of chaos is the law of attractions. There's initial conditions and they actually call strange attractions, strange attractors. And so we can look at any president that has made changes, they're being a strange attractor for whatever chaos they're able to produce in their administrations. The challenge is, once you produce the chaos, how do you control it? You have to learn to be a surfer. And if you can't surf the waves, you have no business introducing chaos, no matter how much good you think it's going to do, or control, or wealth you think it's going to produce for you. Now we're getting down to the really juicy nitty-gritties here that are so paradoxical. It's like, how can that be? You produce chaos and you get something else. Under one condition, it gives you life. In another condition, it gives you hardship. In another condition, it gives you death. So where are we going now? I can look back over, well, I was born in the third term of Franklin Roosevelt. That man produced his own kind of chaos that was more major than many other presidents had. And then the presidents before him, Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover, produced their own forms of chaos, which observers would say were not always good. Some were bad, but it did lead to another kind of chaos. The billionaire faction of the United States had a party in the 1920s, and they had a ball. But the ball ended when the banks failed and the Great Depression occurred out of that chaos. Then Roosevelt started his own, and Lord have mercy, a lot of elders would not be making it today without Social Security, which introduced creativity out of chaos of the Depression. You go back before that, you go back to Teddy Roosevelt, who was the first president who really said, well, we don't want to have all these billionaires and monopolies running the country, so we have to put controls on those. So that's where controls came. Taxation came to help control that, income taxes. Now, not everybody's going to agree with this in terms of their own emotional values and experiences. I'm just putting out the scientific realities that we're dealing with, like it or not. Everything has causalities in science and mathematics. The more we learn and understand about science and math, the better we can do. And I was just thinking about that yesterday and this morning coming into the podcast, that science and math, let me just put this out. I was educated in a field that most youngsters despise and fear. It's called chemistry. And yet, once you can align yourself with the currents of chemical knowledge, you gain control of your learning of chemistry. So chemistry was a real factor there for me in my life. I learned it. I mastered it. I was able to ride the currents of whatever challenges that came about. I hope you see what I'm saying there, Stephen, in terms of the things that people fear that can lead to chaos once you get over the fear. That's
I want to jump in and kind of maybe go down that rabbit hole for just a moment. When chaos presents itself in your life, of course there's going to be fear. We fear the unknown. We fear the future. We fear challenges because we like to... Our subconscious protects us by keeping us in a certain wheelhouse, if you will. Do you find it's impactful if you change your mindset when chaos strikes, and it will, to look at it in a positive way as opposed to something negative? A positive way in terms of, it depends on the chaos, but moving your life forward.
I'm going to use your suggestion to me that you made before the podcast about going with the flow is really the right language for discussing power of positive thinking, which is that came about in the early, back in the 1920s, Norman Vincent Peale.
Great book, by the way, and I should get that and read it again. I have the paperback, and I take it with me when I travel and try to read it like once a year, maybe once every other year. It is, like you said, that book I believe goes back to the 1940s, and has been published
at least
over and over and over again.
My father's gift to me was exposing my brother, sister, and me to that. I call it the power of going with the flow of life. How to discover where the flow points are and getting with them so they're not, raining stress down on you in the mighty waves, the tidal waves that come up in life. So that's what you're asking about here. Now, what we have to be prepared to help our presidents with is to give them the inputs about the control of the chaotic effects of the changes that they make, because they're not always aware that something may be happening and that it's hard on the people. And so they have to learn how to surf, how to master those currents. So that's the hidden message today is, yes, okay, we're having a rearrangement of government bureaucracies, but wait a minute, let's be careful there. How will we control the chaos and channel it to good, to going with the flow of life? I mean, that brings in spirituality. It brings in religion. All that has to act together in a unified whole. I think that really wraps up what my memoir is saying.
Do you feel that there is, when we talk about go with the flow, and you're in that river, that current's taking you, but sometimes you don't want to go with the flow, in your mind, doesn't seem right. Or I'm going to pivot over and grab a log and kind of float with that, or I'm going to grab a branch on the shore because I don't want to go with the flow. Well, but ultimately, do you feel that there is a universe's plan and you're going with the flow no matter what? There's a lesson to be learned. What are your thoughts?
That was the origin of the Hebrew religion, the Judaism, and the origin of Christianity, and Buddhism, and Islam, and other religions in which people develop a narrative about a divine presence that you can actually speak to. I do that myself. It seems very strange for a scientist, but it's not strange for me. But I ask the Lord, I ask God, okay, I'm a stubborn servant. Thy servant is a stubborn scientist. So you want to get my attention, please, you may have to use a 2x4 and say, no, Grant, don't go there, or go here instead. That, and put in simplistic, Christian terms.
I love it.
It's how I do it.
I love it. And we're out of time, but I want to ask this final question. Do you ask for guidance? Do you ask for guidance, whether it's from a God, spirit, universe, your intuition?
I do.
Your intuition?
I do. I wouldn't have made it without that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been a lot of decades by this time. And I used to put, the first time I learned it, I said, I'm putting this out to the universe. Universe, here's what I think I need. Can you take care of that, please? Whenever I do it, it's a releasing process to something beyond myself. Read Jung's psychology. You read Gestalt psychology. It's the same principle. You don't want a deity in your life? Don't get a deity. Get a flow. Get a higher power. Get a universe. And release your concerns to that universe.
Lots of insight today, and I love how we started with talking about the political situation and then turn that chaos back on ourselves in any situation. What's the best way to find your memoir?
Probably right now online. Just any Amazon, Google, Amazon, Apple, or Barnes & Noble, and look for Footprints in the Chaotic Unknown by Venerable. It's all out there.
Got it. You are amazing in what you've done in your life, what you've discovered in your life, and the inspiration that you provide for us. Truly appreciate it, Grant. That's why you're a professional of the year. Thank you so much for being here today. Embrace the chaos. It's a good thing. It might not look that way.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Appreciate you and looking forward next time we get together.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing? Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit. And make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.